Islam does not call its followers to innocence that is naive or unguarded. Virtue is not measured by the ease with which one is deceived, nor by the number of times one trusts blindly. True righteousness combines compassion with discernment, mercy with vigilance, and kindness with awareness. The believer's heart can remain soft, yet their mind must remain sharp. Islam teaches that moral uprightness and conscious protection are not contradictory. They are complementary threads woven into a life of balance. Being gentle and generous does not mean being defenseless. The world contains trials, deception, and intentions that may not align with truth. Islam instructs believers to walk through life with open eyes and steady hearts, neither hardened into suspicion nor lulled into careless trust. Vigilance is not cynicism, nor is it fear paralyzing the spirit. It is wisdom applied with grace. It allows the believer to navigate both worldly affairs and spiritual responsibilities with clarity, ensuring that compassion does not become exploitation and trust does not become a weakness. The Quran emphasizes this balance and guidance for the faithful. And do not kill yourselves or one another. Indeed, Allah is to you ever merciful. Surah An-Nisa 4:29. The verse, while speaking to the sanctity of life, also extends to the broader principle of careful responsibility. Just as one does not recklessly endanger the body, one should not recklessly surrender the heart, trust, or integrity. Life demands prudence in action and mindfulness in interaction, so that kindness does not become vulnerability to harm. A believer's vigilance manifests in many forms. It is discernment in speech, listening carefully to intentions before aligning with them. It is awareness in transactions, ensuring honesty and fairness without succumbing to exploitation. It is mindfulness in relationships, recognizing when to extend trust and when to guard the heart. This vigilance is a protective discipline, a shield for dignity, faith, and stability. It does not harden the heart, but strengthens it, making compassion sustainable rather than fleeting. Blind trust may lead to spiritual harm as well. Deception, manipulation, and moral compromise can silently erode faith when the believer is unaware. Islam teaches that awareness is a form of devotion. Just as prayer disciplines the soul, vigilance disciplines the heart and mind. Being morally upright requires more than good intentions. It requires preparation, insight, and the courage to act wisely in every situation. The balance of the believer is subtle, to remain open, generous, and compassionate, while simultaneously exercising wisdom and foresight. It is a conscious navigation between extremes, where neither naivety nor paranoia dominates. Kindness is preserved, trust is calibrated, and faith is protected. In this state, the believer's heart is alive with love and discernment, aware of the world's challenges, yet anchored in Allah's guidance. Strength in Islam is measured not by domination, intimidation, or the ability to impose one's will, but by the firmness of character guided by conscience and principle. The believer is called to be resolute in truth, unyielding in integrity, yet free from malice. Evil is never met with evil, harm never returned in equal measure, and corruption is never justified as a means of self-protection. Strength, in its truest sense, is moral, not physical, principled, not vindictive. The Quran highlights this approach to firmness in clear terms. Repel evil with that which is better, and thereupon the one whom between you and him is enmity will become as though he was a devoted friend. Surah Fussilat 41:34. This verse does not call for passivity, nor does it glorify weakness. It teaches a dynamic balance, to resist wrong while cultivating righteousness, to set boundaries without bitterness, and to act decisively without abandoning compassion. The believer's firmness becomes a shield, not a weapon, a measure of wisdom, not a reflection of fear or anger. Umar ibn al-Khattab, radiallahu anh, exemplified this ideal, strength with integrity. His authority and courage were tempered by justice, his decisiveness guided by ethical clarity. He did not allow malice to dictate action, yet he did not allow deception to compromise his responsibilities. The believer, like him, walks a path between extremes, neither yielding to the arrogance of aggression nor succumbing to the vulnerability of naive leniency. Generosity and approachability are not signs of weakness, but reflections of strength grounded in moral confidence. A believer can be kind and forgiving, yet attentive and discerning. Boundaries are maintained and principles are defended, not out of spite, but out of love for truth and commitment to justice. This clarity of action preserves dignity, protects faith, and strengthens relationships with others. True firmness also cultivates patience. It allows the believer to endure provocation without internalizing it, to speak truth without hostility, and to act with authority without oppression. The heart remains tender even while the soul is anchored in principle. Malice does not stain the actions. Fear does not dictate the decisions. In this way, the believer's life becomes a living testament to ethical resilience, demonstrating that strength need not compromise virtue. The balance of firmness without malice nurtures trust and respect. People are drawn not only to the believer's courage, but to the integrity that underpins it. Boundaries are understood, promises are honored, and justice is clear. The believer's character radiates a quiet authority, where moral clarity replaces suspicion and ethical resolve outweighs anger. Strength, therefore, is not measured by the absence of challenge, but by the response to it. It is the courage to stand against wrongdoing without committing it, to assert truth without oppressing, and to maintain integrity even when tested. In this balance, the believer achieves a harmony of heart, mind, and action, firm in principle, gentle in approach, and steadfast in service to Allah. Between what is clearly lawful and clearly forbidden lies a subtle space, a zone of ambiguity where human judgment is tested and character is refined. Islam provides boundaries to protect the soul, yet it also leaves areas of discretion, gray areas where intention, awareness, and wisdom determine action. These spaces are not meant for indulgence or convenience. They are the proving grounds of spiritual maturity. The weak-minded, unaware of subtle influence, rushes headlong into the ambiguous, guided by desire, ease, or social pressure. Here, Shaitan plants his whispers most effectively, turning harmless curiosity into habitual negligence and moral compromise. What begins as a small concession gradually becomes normalized, until the soul drifts far from guidance, often without realizing it. These gray zones are like shadows at the edge of light, easy to walk into, yet difficult to escape. The Quran addresses this principle with striking clarity, and do not follow that of which you have no knowledge. Indeed, the hearing, the sight, and the heart, about all those one will be questioned. Surah Al-Isra, 1736. The verse does not simply forbid action without certainty. It reminds us that every ambiguous choice carries moral weight. Spiritual maturity is reflected in restraint, in patience, and in the conscious decision to prioritize protection of faith and honor over the convenience of impulse. A mature believer steps back from uncertainty, choosing the path that safeguards the heart and conscience. This is not extremism or fearfulness. It is foresight rooted in love for Allah and awareness of accountability. Avoiding doubtful matters cultivates discipline, preserves integrity, and fortifies the soul against subtle corruption. In contrast, succumbing to ambiguity often starts small, a seemingly harmless habit, a compromise here or there. But over time, it chips away at moral clarity and spiritual sensitivity. Gray areas are also mirrors of intention. A person may act in doubt but with sincerity and care, or with negligence and disregard. Spiritual maturity is displayed in the consistent effort to align action with divine guidance, to pause and reflect, and to choose caution when clarity is absent. This habit strengthens the heart's responsiveness to revelation, sharpens discernment, and reinforces accountability in every choice. The danger of neglecting these spaces lies not in immediate punishment, but in gradual desensitization. The soul becomes accustomed to moral ambiguity, ethical shortcuts, and convenient rationalizations. What was once caution becomes carelessness. What was once hesitation becomes habitual compromise. Shaitan thrives in the margins, where responsibility feels optional and vigilance is absent. True spiritual strength, therefore, is displayed not only in overt acts of worship, but in the quiet discernment of daily decisions. In the gray zones, the believer exercises wisdom, patience, and foresight. By choosing caution over convenience, the heart remains alive, the conscience intact, and faith protected. It is in these subtle choices, made consistently, that character is forged and guidance preserved. Shaitan does not attack blindly. He studies the terrain of the human soul, mapping its vulnerabilities, desires, and hidden corners. He knows which hearts will waver at the promise of ease, which minds will rationalize compromise, and which emotions can be subtly manipulated to lead a believer astray. Ignorance is dangerous, but it is weakness. Arrogance, overconfidence, and neglect is far more inviting to him. The Quran reminds us of this subtle threat. Indeed, Shaitan is an enemy to you, so take him as an enemy. He only invites his party to be among the companions of the blaze. Surah Fatir 35:6. The verse calls for active awareness, to see the enemy, recognize his tactics, and respond with vigilance. Yet many falter precisely when they feel secure, when they think their knowledge, piety, or moral discipline has rendered them invulnerable. The moment one says, "I know myself, I am safe," the heart opens to subtle deception. Shaitan thrives on human overconfidence. He exploits the very traits we consider strengths: courage that becomes recklessness, intelligence that becomes pride, devotion that becomes complacency. Weakness is not only moral failure, it is any lapse in humility, any moment of forgetting one's reliance on Allah. Even the strongest believer, if inattentive, can be led into error because the soul is inherently fragile without divine support. True faith, therefore, is inseparable from humility. The believer constantly recognizes their own limitations and seeks protection from Allah in every breath. Vigilance becomes a daily practice, a state of the heart, a conscious awareness that one is never alone with one's impulses or blind spots. The dua for steadfastness is not a sign of doubt, but a mark of wisdom. Our Lord, let not our hearts deviate after you have guided us, and grant us mercy from yourself. Indeed, you are the bestower. Surah Al-Imran 3:8. This awareness shapes behavior. The believer does not rely solely on willpower or past good deeds. They recognize that even sincere intentions require reinforcement, that memory of Allah must be repeated, and that humility is the key to sustaining obedience. Every temptation, every challenge, every moment of ease or distraction is met with mindfulness. Am I aware? Am I vigilant? Am I seeking refuge in Allah? Shaitan's deception is gradual, often imperceptible. It does not announce itself as evil. It comes as a soft rationalization, a fleeting justification, a seductive convenience. Awareness transforms these moments into tests rather than traps. Weakness is acknowledged, boundaries are respected, and reliance on divine guidance is made central. Faith anchored in humility and vigilance becomes a fortress. It does not eliminate human frailty, but it channels it towards sincere reliance on Allah. The believer's heart remains alive, responsive, and protected, not because human resolve is flawless, but because divine support is sought consistently, consciously, and with full awareness of the enemy who waits for any lapse. Kindness is a gift, a reflection of the heart illuminated by Allah's mercy. Yet even gifts can be misused when offered without wisdom or boundaries. A heart that gives endlessly without discernment risks losing more than possessions. It risks dignity, peace, and even faith. Islam celebrates generosity, but it pairs virtue with discipline, teaching that strength of character lies not in softness alone, but in the balance of mercy and mindfulness. The Quran reminds us of this equilibrium. O you who have believed, do not consume one another's wealth unjustly, but only in lawful business by mutual consent. And do not kill yourselves or one another. Indeed, Allah is to you ever merciful. Surah An-Nisa 4:29. While the verse addresses financial and physical harm, it reflects a broader principle. The believer must not allow themselves to be exploited, emotionally or spiritually, under the guise of virtue. Life demands both generosity and discernment, mercy and self-respect. Excessive softness often arises from a desire to be loved, to be seen as good, or to avoid conflict. While understandable, this tendency can become a trap. Emotional, financial, and spiritual exploitation frequently target those who are unwilling or unsure how to say no. The heart that sacrifices itself repeatedly for others may feel fulfilled temporarily, Yet it is quietly depleted, leaving a trail of regret, resentment, or vulnerability. Islam calls for giving, but not at the cost of the soul's stability or moral clarity. Wisdom in generosity is intentional. The believer evaluates need and sincerity, recognizes repeated patterns of harm, and gives in ways that sustain rather than deplete. Assistance becomes an act of love and obedience when accompanied by clarity of purpose and awareness of limits. In this way, kindness is not reckless. It is strategic, ethical, and protective of the heart while still extending mercy to others. The Prophet ﷺ exemplified this balance. He was generous beyond measure, yet he did not allow exploitation to compromise his mission or the well-being of his companions. Every act of giving was measured, deliberate, and aligned with divine guidance. Softness was never weakness. It was disciplined mercy, tempered with wisdom and foresight. Boundaries do not diminish virtue, they preserve it. A kind act performed without thought can quickly become a liability, but the same act performed with awareness nurtures both giver and receiver. Islam teaches that intention and discernment are inseparable from action. The heart must give, but it must also protect itself from repeated harm disguised as need. Kindness, then, is not merely a spontaneous trait, it is a cultivated discipline. It allows the believer to reflect Allah's mercy in the world, while remaining anchored in ethical awareness. Mercy without mindfulness becomes a pathway to depletion. Generosity without boundaries becomes a conduit for harm. The believer learns to balance softness with firmness, compassion with discernment, and giving with self-respect, so that virtue remains a source of strength rather than self-destruction. Major decisions in life, the choice of a spouse, the selection of close friends, the alliances we form, carry consequences that ripple through years, shaping hearts, homes, and faith. Islam warns against approaching such decisions with naivety or blind trust. To rely solely on appearances, promises, or emotional persuasion is not reliance on Allah. It is risk masquerading as faith. True tawakkul requires effort, reflection, and discernment, especially in matters that define one's spiritual and personal trajectory. The Quran underscores this principle through guidance that encourages awareness and prudence. O you who have believed, fear Allah and speak words of appropriate justice. He will then amend for you your deeds and forgive you your sins. And whoever obeys Allah and His Messenger has certainly attained a great attainment. Surah Al-Ahzab 3:33:70-71. While this verse addresses speech and accountability, its wisdom extends to all decisions. Thoughtful, principled action aligned with justice and reflection ensures that our choices nurture faith rather than undermine it. Naivety often disguises itself as hope or trust. Young hearts, untested by hardship, may assume the best in people without verifying character. Promises are believed at face value, emotional speeches are elevated above consistent behavior, and warning signs are dismissed as pessimism. Such oversights can lead to profound regret, strained relationships, and even damage to one's faith. Islam teaches that foresight, consultation, and careful evaluation are integral to reliance on Allah, not contrary to it. Prophetic guidance reinforces this principle. The Prophet emphasized the assessment of character, consistency, and outcomes before forming deep personal or social bonds. Decisions are never to be made in haste or emotional vulnerability alone. Investigation, reflection, and consultation are forms of stewardship over the soul and family. They ensure that the bonds we form strengthen, rather than compromise, our devotion and well-being. True reliance on Allah does not remove responsibility, it amplifies it. Effort, clarity, and prudence are acts of obedience. Consulting trusted advisors, observing patterns of behavior, and weighing consequences are not signs of doubt. They are signs of wisdom and submission. The believer who balances trust in Allah with careful discernment safeguards the heart, the family, and the spiritual path from preventable harm. Naivety in major life decisions is rarely immediately obvious. Its effects unfold slowly, eroding stability, trust, and spiritual focus. Yet even this can be mitigated through conscious reflection, prayer, and consultation. By approaching decisions with humility, vigilance, and intention, the believer aligns worldly choice with divine guidance. In this way, faith and prudence are inseparable. Reliance on Allah strengthens the heart and conscience, but effort ensures that the foundation of life is secure. A wise decision honors both human responsibility and divine guidance, creating a path that nurtures faith, sustains integrity, and protects the heart from the long-term consequences of misplaced trust. Not every voice is a guide, and not every loud or popular speech carries truth. In an age where words travel faster than reflection, believers are constantly presented with ideas, advice, and interpretations, some sincere, others misleading. Islam does not call for unquestioning obedience to whoever speaks convincingly. Rather, it calls for discernment, patience, and evaluation of the fruit that guidance bears in one's life. The heart, intellect, and conscience must all participate in receiving knowledge. The Quran provides a clear principle for evaluating those who claim authority. Do not follow blindly the desires of those who were given the scripture before you or those who do not know, and fear Allah if you should truly be believers. Surah Al-Ma'idah 577. Belief is never passive. Guidance is not a matter of popularity, eloquence, or persuasion. The believer is responsible for where they place their trust, and this requires careful observation, reflection, and alignment with the Quran and Sunnah. The measure of true guidance lies in its effects. Does it bring a heart closer to Allah? Does it cultivate character, patience, humility, and generosity? Does it improve relationships, obedience, and sincerity? Words that inspire confusion, arrogance, or superficial action, even if repeated often or delivered with charm, are warnings rather than blessings. Years of listening without clarity or growth are not signs of spiritual enlightenment. They are signs of weak discernment and passive consumption. Blind adherence to voices, no matter how impressive, risks displacing personal responsibility. Islam honors knowledge and scholarship, yet it never suspends the intellect. The believer is called to weigh evidence, verify sources, and consult the Quran and authentic Sunnah before adopting ideas or practices. To follow blindly is to abdicate stewardship of one's own faith, a dangerous surrender in matters where hearts and souls are at stake. This does not mean that one distrusts everyone, nor does it advocate arrogance toward scholars. Rather, it is a call to active engagement, listening with awareness, questioning with humility, and acting with intention. Scholars exist to clarify, to teach, and to guide, but their words must be tested against divine revelation and reason. Loud voices, social trends, and viral speeches are no substitute for consistent, principled study and reflection. The believer's path is one of balance, respect for knowledge, vigilance in reception, and accountability in application. Confusion, misalignment, or repeated doubt after consuming advice is a signal to pause, reassess, and return to foundational sources. True guidance strengthens faith, cultivates clarity, and results in action aligned with divine principles. In this way, the believer protects the heart, mind, and soul from deception. Every voice is filtered through the lens of intention, integrity, and divine standard. The sound of popularity may echo widely, but only truth that bears fruit in obedience, humility, and righteous action is worthy of following. Islam does not promise safety in numbers or applause. It promises reward for discernment, effort, and conscious adherence to Allah's guidance. Emotions are powerful forces, shaping perceptions, decisions, and relationships. When left unchecked, they can distort judgment, magnify bias, and lead even the well-intentioned into error. Islam does not forbid feeling. It recognizes the depth and beauty of human emotion. But it commands that emotions be tempered by reason, knowledge, and justice. Acting impulsively in conflicts, especially without clarity or necessity, risks turning compassion into harm, loyalty into injustice, and intervention into a source of regret. The Quran establishes this principle with unambiguous guidance. O you who have believed, be persistently standing firm in justice, witnesses for Allah, even if it be against yourselves or your parents and relatives. Whether one is rich or poor, Allah is more worthy of both. So follow not personal inclination, lest you not be just. And if you distort your testimony or refuse to give it, then indeed Allah is ever with what you do acquainted. Surah An-Nisa 4:135. Even when emotions pull toward family, friends, or self-interest, justice must remain the priority. To act without it is to betray both divine guidance and one's own conscience. Emotional manipulation is subtle. A tearful appeal, a passionate story, or a familiar grievance can move the heart, leading the unwary to side before assessing truth. Family bias, social pressure, and personal attachment often cloud judgment, giving the illusion of righteousness while masking harm. The weak-minded, untrained in patience and reflection, may intervene impulsively, believing that immediate action is justice. Islam teaches otherwise. Sometimes restraint, silence, or careful investigation is the highest form of obedience. Justice in this sense is not passive. It requires awareness, discernment, and courage. It may demand stepping back while others rush in, questioning narratives that feel compelling, and prioritizing what Allah commands over what social norms or personal feelings dictate. Acting prematurely can harm not only others, but one's own soul. Regret in this life may be minor compared to accountability on the day when every action, including emotional impulses, is weighed. Taqwa is cultivated in these moments. It is the internal compass that tempers emotional reaction with moral principle, the inner restraint that values truth over immediate satisfaction, and the spiritual awareness that God sees what the heart feels even before the hand moves. In conflict, speaking without clarity or siding without knowledge undermines justice, betrays trust, and diminishes spiritual integrity. The believer learns to pause, reflect, and seek clarity. Questions are asked before judgment is rendered, evidence is weighed before action, and intentions are examined before words are spoken. Emotions remain alive, yet they are guided, disciplined, and harmonized with divine instruction. In this balance, fairness becomes second nature, restraint becomes a form of worship, and justice, rather than impulse, defines conduct. In every dispute, in every story that pulls at the heart, the believer remembers that righteousness is measured not by fervor, but by fairness. Acting justly in the face of emotion preserves the soul, honors Allah's commands, and establishes integrity in both this life and the hereafter. Blind innocence may appear virtuous, but Islam never encourages it. A soft heart without clarity, a trusting mind without discernment, or a life guided solely by impulse invites harm rather than mercy. The believer is called not to naivety, but to awareness, not to passivity, but to vigilance. Spiritual and practical responsibility are inseparable. Regret, not reward, is often the outcome of ignoring these principles. The Quran reminds us of the cost of neglect. So whoever Allah wants to guide, He expands His breast to contain Islam, and whoever He wants to misguide, He makes His breast tight and constricted as though He were climbing into the sky. Surah Al-An'am 6:125. Guidance is granted, but it requires preparation of the heart and mind. A weak-minded person leaves the chest narrow, overwhelmed by emotion, temptation, or social pressures. When harm occurs, regret follows. Mercy is not a guarantee for those who fail to exercise foresight, reflection, and careful action. Weakness of mind shows itself in many forms. It is the disregard for boundaries, the unquestioning acceptance of others' words, the abandonment of reason in favor of comfort or approval. It manifests in hasty decisions in matters of faith, family, or social interaction, and in failure to learn from previous missteps. Islam calls the believer to a higher standard, to think before acting, to assess consequences before committing, and to remain anchored in divine guidance even when emotions or desires pull strongly. Regret often comes slowly, creeping in after the damage is done. A neglected warning, a hastily trusted individual, or an unchecked desire leaves consequences that cannot be undone. The believer who acts without awareness discovers that intentions alone do not suffice. Boundaries ignored, counsel dismissed, and principles abandoned create a vacuum in which harm multiplies. Islam teaches that protection of the heart, faith, and family is an active responsibility, one that demands intellect, vigilance, and moral courage. Strength of mind and heart is cultivated by consistent reflection, grounding oneself in the Quran, and seeking knowledge from trustworthy sources. It is reinforced by regular self-accountability, mindful observation of the world, and asking Allah for guidance before making choices. Faith is not passive. It is a dynamic state of preparedness. Emotional impulse, social pressure, or fleeting desires cannot replace the conscious effort required to preserve one's soul, relationships, and integrity. The believer learns to balance mercy with prudence, kindness with discernment, and openness with protective boundaries. Every action becomes a reflection of thoughtful obedience, every choice a test of responsibility. In this way, regret is minimized not because life is risk-free, but because the heart and mind are equipped to navigate challenges with awareness. Islam rewards those who remain awake, thoughtful, and grounded, and it warns against the consequences of weak-mindedness. Blindness of judgment is never innocent. It is a pathway to sorrow. The faithful safeguard their hearts, their families, and their souls by cultivating clarity, foresight, and moral firmness. Ensuring that mercy, not regret, is the ultimate companion of a conscious, responsible life. O Allah, most wise, most merciful, grant us clarity of mind and firmness of heart. Awaken our hearts to your guidance and protect us from deception, weakness, and heedlessness. Let us see the truth with insight, listen with presence, and act with discernment so that we do not fall into traps of naivety, carelessness, or blind trust. Make us kind without being careless, generous without losing our boundaries, and forgiving without abandoning justice. Strengthen us to stand firm without harshness, to speak with courage without malice, and to protect ourselves while remaining gentle in character. Let our vigilance be wisdom, not fear. Let our discernment be mercy, not suspicion. O Allah, guide our choices in every stage of life. Protect our hearts from subtle temptations, our decisions from reckless impulse, and our relationships from deception. Keep our intentions sincere, our actions consistent, and our reliance upon you conscious and unwavering. Let our faith be alive in every breath, our hearts responsive to your reminders, and our deeds aligned with your commands. Shield us from regret in this world and the hereafter. Guard us from the consequences of weak-mindedness, hurried judgment, and emotional folly. Let every step we take be deliberate, every choice measured, and every act of devotion purposeful. Instill in us the courage to reflect, the patience to discern, and the humility to seek your guidance continually. O Allah, make the Quran a light in our hearts, a guide in our lives, and a witness in our favor on the day we return to you. Grant us sincerity in worship, steadfastness on the straight path, and hearts that tremble with awe at your presence. Protect us from heedlessness, hypocrisy, and spiritual blindness, and grant us a life that reflects your mercy, wisdom, and justice in every thought, word, and action. Amen. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and share it with your friends. Every click helps us grow and spread beneficial knowledge. Thank you for being part of our community.